Keats is a poem by this well-known romantic poet that explores the theme of love, and it uses some common romantic imagery. He uses religion and he uses nature, in this case mostly a bright star. Bright star, would I were steadfast as thou art, not in lone splendour hung aloft the night, and watching with eternal lids apart, like nature's patient sleepless eremite, the moving waters at their priest-like task of pure ablution round earth's human shores, or gazing on the new soft-fallen mask of snow upon the mountains and the moors. No, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable, pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever its soft fall and swell, awake forever in a sweet unrest. Still, still to hear her tender taken breath, and so live ever or else swoon to death. So it's a beautiful poem. He's looking at a bright star in the sky, and he wants to be as steadfast and as unchanging as the star is, with its eternal lids apart, looking down at the moving waters, the waves coming in and out, and the snow on the mountains, on the moors. No, he doesn't want to be isolated like that, but he does want to be steadfast and unchangeable as he lies there upon his fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever her breathing, her fall and swell as she breathes in and out. And he wants to be awake forever in a sweet unrest, to hear her every breath and live forever or else swoon to death. So it's very romantic, very grand, and we'll look at it line by line. So if we look at the poem's length and rhyme scheme, we'll be able to tell that we have a sonnet, we have the 3 quatrains, and we have the rhyming couplet, and that makes up our 14 lines. And we know that the Volta is at line 9, and we can determine where the shift is because at line 9 we have the word no, and that shows us where the change comes in. We move from imagining what the star is looking at, hung aloft in the night sky, to the man, to the poet who's lying on his fair love's ripening breast. So quite a straightforward poem, but let's go through it. Bright star, would I were as steadfast as thou art. So he wishes that he could be as unchanging and as constant as the star is in the sky, but not in lone splendour hung aloft the night. So the qualities of the star that he notices is its unchanging steadfastness as it's aloft in the night, but he also notices that it's alone, its isolation and its splendour. And so he realizes that whilst the qualities are good and bad, he doesn't like the isolation. He admires the steadfastness. And watching with eternal lids apart. So the other qualities of the star that he's exploring through personification is how it appears to be an eye in the sky looking down without blinking for eternity. It never sleeps and it cannot participate. It can only watch. Like nature's patient, sleepless eremite. Okay, so this old-fashioned way of saying hermit is a simile like nature's patient, sleepless eremite. And it suggests the star's like a hermit and is the first example of religious imagery used because the word hermit refers to somebody who is something of a recluse and spends his or her time alone in prayer and in religious study. And so this is what he's suggesting, that this bright star, he's personifying it previously with its unblinking eye, and now he's using a simile to compare it to a hermit praying and spending its time in religious contemplation. So he's suggesting the star is something pure and holy, and it's also observing the moving waters at their priest-like task, which is the next bit of religious imagery that we have. So like the rituals in a church, so the waters are moving in and out, priest-like and soothing. So the poem's focus has moved from the star now down to the earth. And it's talking about the waves in an act of ablution. So the sea, the water or sea image is compared to an ablution, personifying the water as the priest that washes on human shores. So it's also a metaphor because the constant movement washes the shore. It's a cleansing ritual. And so we have this idea of the star being like a hermit in prayer, watching the sea down below in its priest-like task. And the star's also gazing perhaps on the new soft fallen mask. And the metaphor and impact here is the connotations of the soft fallen snow, which becomes the mask. It's pure, clean, cold, and new. There's a sense of distant beauty in all of the imagery used. There's the star, the sea, and the snow. They're all quite cold. The ideas of isolation and distance has been continued. Of snow upon the mountains and the moors. So the mask of snow on the mountains and the moors is what the star is looking down on. The mountains and the moors are wearing this mask, so they're being personified. And the soft alliteration of mountains and moors is very effective because it reminds one of the soft sound of the snow. The M alliteration emphasizes this through sound, like a murmur. And then we come to the Volta. So he wants to be as unchanging as the star, but he doesn't want to be as aloof, as isolated in its watching of the water and the snow and the other things it can see from above with its unblinking eye. No, he doesn't want that, but he does want to be steadfast and unchangeable. So we return then to the poet. So in the first line we have the eye looking at the star, and now we return and we go, and he says, no, yet still steadfast. And the word no signals this shift. And the word that ties us back to bright star you'll have recognized is steadfast and unchangeable. And then still is a pun, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable, because he remains steadfast and remains unchangeable. Or at least the star does, and it is also still. It doesn't move in the night sky. So he's asking to be like the star in his feelings, because now we shift to the human aspect, to the love aspect. And this is what he wants to be steadfast and unchangeable about. He wants to be pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast, which I think speaks for itself. To feel forever its soft swell, fallen swell, which is quite an intimate picture of the fallen swell as he lies on her breast, and ties to the ideas of the tides as they move in and out. So we have the rise and fall of her breast, and it links into the image of the tides as they come in and out. Just going to return to that slide. So sensuality is explored in words like ripeness, swell, breast, pillowed, and this is where it becomes more intimate. Awake forever in a sweet unrest. So the device used with sweet unrest is, I'm sure you're all saying it aloud now, is a paradox, because he doesn't want to sleep and miss a moment of this time, this beautiful moment of love with his lover. And so he doesn't, he even though he may be tired in his unrest, it's sweet, and he doesn't want it to end. So being unable to sleep as he lies awake, his wakefulness is still sweet as he lies with his love. Still to hear her tender taken breath. The rhyming couplet starts here, and this is the rhyming couplet, as you know, functions to sum up what's been explored in the quatrains before. And the word still is used again. Still to hear her tender taken breath. And so we have still being used a few times in the poem, and it emphasizes the passing of time. So still, to not move, and then again still, the sense, this idea of it not changing. And then it ends, the word tender, emphasizes this moment and makes this moment precious to him. And again, we've got some alliteration, the tender taken breath. And so live forever, or else swoon to death. So the star's timeless quality is contrasted with his earthly concerns of time and eventual death. And then the final word, death, is plosive and emphasized in its position at the end of the sonnet. And so live forever or I'll swoon to death. Swoon has a number of connotations. Does he swoon because of his love? In other words, does he kind of feel faint and swoon? Or will he die content because of this? Is it a physical swoon, or does it point to an orgasm perhaps? La petite morte, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is the French word for the small death, which is what an orgasm is often called. And it is deliberately ambiguous and contrasts with the cold isolation of the star that is steadfast but can only watch what goes on down below. And that's the end of the